All right. Good morning, Youngstown. This is Youngstown Studios Talk Channel, and interesting weekend happened, and a lot of stuff to talk about. First, I want to point out the city of Youngstown. If you've been downtown lately, there are these autonomous vehicles, and we talked about this a couple years ago. The city of Youngstown got a grant for uh, widening some of the roadways and having these transportation vehicles that kind of just, they tool around driverless. Now, right now, they're driving around, they're running a loop from north of the university down in the downtown area, and they are currently being piloted by a human being who's responsible for taking over if the autonomous vehicles has some kind of problem. I remember when they did this over in Las Vegas, they had some problems with the busing. You know how the buses kind of run down the strip. Well, being that they just make a continuous loop and all they have to do is respond to pedestrians and other cars and make their stops, they had some problems early on with some near misses and some collisions and whatnot. And I like this version of it first, where they're allowing it to be piloted by a human being for a little while until there hasn't been any interventions. There hasn't been, the human being didn't have to avoid a pothole or not hit a person or whatever. And I think the advent of AI and having some of these human roles be taken away from computer systems, I think it has the potential to be more cost effective because you're not paying a salary. You have a one-time fee of a machine, and then it just serves this purpose. So anything that can be replaced with a computer system, I argue probably should be. Everything from delivery vehicles, drones, and whatever. But anyway, we have these downtown, and I am, I refer to them sort of like the experimental group to see if it fits in. So if you're, moving around downtown, your big argument is that there's no parking, but you've got this fleet of vehicles that are making this loop. Are you likely to jump on board and be delivered to wherever you're headed rather than having to walk the downtown streets? It's not a very big loop, so it's not like you can go to Boardman and get shuttled downtown. It would be north of the university to the south side of the downtown area, and hitting all of the main east and west streets. So I want to hear from you if you think this is a good idea, something that you would be willing to jump on. It's free right now, so you could be part of the experiment, not have to pay anything for transportation. But I foresee in the future that the WRTA, the busing authority in the downtown, will probably end up taking over this project, and part of their busing that can be replaced with autonomous, will probably be, and I'm guessing that they'll add more of these. So when you compare a big bus running these routes versus a smaller vehicle that maybe has seating, I don't know. I estimate maybe 12 people can jump on these at any given time. And would you trust a computer system and the autonomous system driving you around and feeling comfortable and confident? Later this year, Tesla is actually going to come out with a robo taxi that was demonstrated in last year's, I think it was October. They demonstrated it driving around the streets, and you got to jump in it. And there's actually no steering wheel whatsoever. So front two seats are just passenger seats, rear seats just passenger seats, and this thing, drives you around. And I think from a technology standpoint, that's where we're absolutely headed. But let me know in the comments, or you can call the program 330-595-1600. And Carter says, good morning, Joe. Enjoy your show each morning. Thank you, Carter, and I appreciate it. And everybody who listens to the show, we're also going to be, I'm going to be on filling in for Ron Verb on WKBN later in the week. I believe that's the 3rd, and then a second date the following week. So we'll bring some of our talk radio to the terrestrial airwaves and filling in for our good friend WKBN. Jeff says WBRT hometown mornings with Roger Gribbins. Good morning, Jeff. I appreciate you being out there. All right. So over the weekend, Saturday was a well orchestrated protest against Tesla. And I want to know from you guys that are listening, and you know I'm a little bit of a fanboy of Elon Musk. He's one of my mentors. I read everything I can about him, so I'm going to play as objective as I can be about a certain segment of the population having a big problem with Elon Musk. And part of me says that it is I disagree ideologically, so then he can do no right. But try to dig down and give me real cause and reasons for a orchestrated paid movement to go out there and disturb and torture his business, his businesses and his business dealings as a protest to what he's doing within government, putting pressure on him. And, that seems to me like a strategy that I would never want done to me. So I would have a hard time justifying crippling or kind of blackmailing someone into changing behaviors because of something I was willing to do from that. It's almost like that old union mentality where you have an objective, and the only way that you could do that is through violence and that kind of same blackmail thing. And again, I just don't think it's a good strategy. It's not how a civilized society airs their grievances and tries to make any kind of changes. But as you see, like, I believe the deadline for Doge to make their final cuts and their final analysis of government entities, it was June, and now that's kind of moved back to May. So I'm wondering if maybe the pressures against Elon's interests are effective and are making him say, okay, this government thing, if my companies are all sabotaged by people disagreeing with me, that's not good for business. And I've got to keep innovating after this stint is done. So shortening that curve, giving the most amount of government cuts that he can up through May and then bailing out. But someone who is not a big fan of Elon, let me know in the comments, what your big objection, and do you think the strategy is the way to do this? I mean, if I lost an election and I was not happy that the people that I lost to were going to do things I disagree with, is different than getting in the way and maneuvering so that, the axe to grind and the hurt feelings is enough to make me sabotage what it is that they're going to do through, not authentic and truthful means. I mean, that sounds like you're not going to like that if your side ends up winning and then the other side does the exact same thing to you. It seems like it's a bad strategy, almost like when I think it was, what was it? I'll come back to that example. Let me read through some of the comments here. Joe, last comment was a mistake. Oh, okay. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it. But if you want to get online, 330-595-1600, we could talk about the over the weekend protests with Tesla. And if you are not a fan of Elon Musk and you want to give me a really good reason why you think this is a strategy that's worth taking, and there won't be consequences when your side or the people you agree with get elected, share it in the comments or call the program 330-595-1600. The other topic that I wanted to talk about as a libertarian, and I tell you, being a libertarian now, we've always been sort of like grouped in with the fringe because there were some real crazies that were in the Libertarian Party. And I don't ever consider myself as being someone who was even part of the Libertarian Party. I'm more small r or small l libertarian, where I have my ideals of small limited government. And if there were a libertarian candidate, I probably would not be a libertarian voter. I just ideologically, if you plot me on a political spectrum, I'm right in the libertarian. But anyway, libertarians have now, instead of just being fringe crazy people, they are being cast as someone who can't decide, right? And in the tribal, primitive sense of where politics is at right now, someone who can't decide to be on a team is part enemy and part, friend. and we're dangerous because we won't get on a team and support blindly across the board. And that makes everybody a little bit uncomfortable, as we point out on a regular basis. Joe says, libertarian, a Republican who's just ashamed to admit it. Not at all. There, and what I'm going to bring up here in my next topic is a true sense of, had I adopted a Republican philosophy, it would be really hard for me to point out this next story. So I'll just go into it. So in Wisconsin, they're having a redistricting fight that is predicated on having Supreme Court justices that will redraw lines to give Democrats an advantage. And the fight against it means that if they redistrict it, then the House of Representatives is going to get some extra seats from Wisconsin, and ultimately the Republican majority in the House will be dwindled, if not erased. And then, you break one House of Congress up and give it to Democrat control, which would really grind the gears of getting anything done from the executive branch and the legislative branch. So anyway, the Elon Musk and the Republican cohorts are up in Wisconsin, and they are stumping very hard for the candidates in Wisconsin's election tomorrow. And one of the strategies that he used even during the first election was offering money in a very creative way to inspire voters to go to the polls. Okay, so using giveaways and sweepstakes in order to bait people, get them excited, because what people will do for money in politics, especially if you offer it to regular voters, it's not paying somebody for a vote, but it's damn close, and it brings a level of discomfort to me for sure. That if you can find an end around to float money into politics and buy votes. I mean, one of the examples were that if you canvass, if you go out and knock on doors, if you get a picture taken with a voter holding a sign of the person that they're going to vote for, they'll give you $20 as the canvasser. And so, I want we want to get money away from politics. So this is sort of like, you have two choices: high road, where you stick to the principle, and if you believe that money should be out of politics, then you keep money out of politics when you have the opportunity, even if it's legal. Or two, you play the game and you just outplay and maneuver. One is principled, where you created this advantage for yourself by not partaking in something you disagree with. Or two, you play the game and do it well, and you justify that you backed away from something, a principle that you are now in conflict with. So 330-595-1600. Dennis said, I can't believe he actually doing what most politicians campaigned on for my entire life. It's so dumb. It's so dumb to do what you say. I thought it took an act of Congress to get anything done in this country. Shame on him for shattering the paradigm. Chad Michael says, I'm not sure why people seem obsessed with libertarians choosing a side. And Joe said, Citizens United at its best. And so, like, what I'm always hopeful for when it comes to politics, that once something happens, so whether it be the executive branch overreaching, or the legislative branch, or the judicial branch, when you have disagreement, you think that they've gone too far, that you hope that they snap and invent a principle that should have existed all along, that you hem them in, right? You come to the conclusion that they do have too much power, they do have too much control, and then all the libertarians stand up and say, yes, do it. But they go so far as a disagreeing with this exercise of the overreach, but they never get down to the fact that why it was even possible in the first place. It's because somebody took advantage of a loophole, and when the other people take advantage of that loophole, you hate it, and when your side does, you like it. And that's what I'm saying, where if you don't want canvassers be paid, if you want them all to be volunteers and be completely inspired with the motivated by their support for the candidate rather than being paid, if you want all of your protesters to be really pissed off instead of paid to be there, there's a level of authenticity is that everything we're seeing is an apparition. Like there's nothing that's authentic. It's all being bought and paid for by money that, if I had a venue of 10,000 people and 8,000 of them were paid to be there, well, it would be less of a spectacle if only 2,000 of your most ardent supporters showed up and it was a half empty venue. The optics of that, the public would say, well, they don't really have as much support as, I thought a half empty stadium. People aren't really that pissed off. People aren't really that happy. But if you make it a full venue, then what it seems like is the sheer number of people that were willing to show up there. Man, this must be a movement, and I got to get behind that movement. So from a marketing standpoint, it's really good for your, whatever you're putting up on stage to make it look like it has this huge amount of support. But the minute that I tell you that 75% of them were paid to be there, then you should be going like, okay, that shouldn't be allowed. Why are we letting support be purchased? And then the dominoes of, well, are we paying people to sign up voters and harvest voters and, push narratives on media? All of this stuff adds up to, elections just can be bought and paid for by any special interest group. So if there's Joe pointed out, Citizens United, if there are any groups, but it's tough because you could point out your opponent's dark money or special interest, but what about yours? What about when, let's just say your group's the NRA or AARP, and they need to have a say in persuading legislators to give them their will, right? And so if you can pay legislators through trade or cash or, kickbacks or whatever to go your direction because they pay the bills, then that is the introduction of everything that you need to root out. And I think it's too far gone to root it out gracefully because there's just too much of it and there's too many beneficiaries of the payoffs and nobody's willing to give up their version of the payoffs, but it's everybody else that has to give up there. So that's that contradiction that I think we're going to warm up to over the next couple months as we keep, USAID, Gonzville completely shuttered, merged in with another agency. And so as we're seeing all these independent agencies, it's almost like that consolidation we talk about locally, where if you have a fire department and you've got too many and it's a lot of waste, you jam them together, make one fire department and figure out how to solve the basic necessities of what the fire department does without having all of the overhead of having too many people serving too few of, sort of real responsibilities from that agency. And if they find out that, the Department of Education can be merged in with something else, in this case, it was the Small Business Association, and you can take the Health and Human Services and sort of absorb 5 or 6 other agencies, you can find that instead of dreaming up new things for bureaucrats to spend their time doing, you can give them actual multiple duties that span across different segments of different industries and just get more use out of those people. Because I think those idle people, it's really good if we gave a lot of jobs away. We keep money flowing through the economy by giving payrolls away to people who didn't do much of anything. And I say that sort of snarky. I'm sure they did things, but most of the things that they were doing were not. You could, if you dismantled all of the necessities, separated them out between things that had to be done and things that would justify your existence. I am sure that there was a majority of justified things, and that's if you root it out and just get your core employees just fielding the necessities of government. You can do it with far fewer agencies, far fewer buildings, far fewer budgets, and far fewer personnel. Billy says, I think there's a difference between groups like the NRA and Citizens United. I could be wrong, but the NRA has a function that precedes their political activism. Citizens United doesn't have an actual function other than political activism. And I would say ideologically, you're probably right. But if you looked at it void of all the nouns and verbs and you just watched the activity of what they do and how they accomplish it, I bet you that you wouldn't be able to tell which is which. They're still paying lobbyists. They're still skewing and fighting for a cause in the legislature. And, like if it's all the same in action, how do you separate? How do you make K Street disappear? And knowing that if you made K Street disappear, a lot of people who are defending you and the things you like are going to disappear with them. And then there's going to be politicians looking around saying, well, usually there would be 6 lobbyists in my office in the morning telling me how I should vote and what I should do. I mean, I got to come up with principled reasons to vote on things or propose legislation based on just my feeling as a representative of my district. That would be a huge, I think that would be a huge advantage if it was just represent your voters only, screw the special interests. And that's why I say it's, we're probably too far gone. There's far too much money, and I don't know that you root it out or can root it out at this point. But we'll continue to slog along and complain about it every chance we get. Joe says corporations are people. What a joke. And I always hear this, and so if you, and this is why corporations are looked at as people, it's not a joke as much as you would think. It's, we made corporations into people. And if you can legislatively attack someone, right, then the person that you're attacking or you're levying some kind of regulation or taxes on or whatever, that person needs to be represented to push back against whatever you're supposed to be doing. So in our current system, everybody gets to eyeball their oppressor and plead their case, air their grievances, check to find if it's legal. So if you go after a company and you don't handle it outside of government and regulation and whatever, then they have just as much a right to defend them. I mean, the alternative would be that legislators could go directly after companies they dislike, and the companies, since they're not treated as people, would not be able to represent themselves and push back against whatever you're trying to do to them. So the way that you make corporations not into people is you don't attack them like you would the people who live under your rule. As long as you do that, they have no choice to. Joe says, no, we didn't. SCOTUS did. And like I said, that's the reason why, because, they would be at an extreme, almost like if somehow you got arrested and they were charging you with a crime and there was nothing at your disposal to defend yourself. They could just charge you and you had no representation. You had nobody looking out for you. You could just be put in jail. And that's it. When you grow government to this size, you cannot help but step on people and reduce their liberties. The scope of government is just too large and they have control over too many areas. So if you shrunk government down where they didn't have the ability to go after people, you have a different set of problems, but you don't have these ones. And we're just living in a world where we made it too big because, we looked at the government as our trough, the more it could deliver things to us. In my opinion, government should be so boring that nobody paid attention to them. They weren't stars. And if you said, you might know your local representative, but you wouldn't know the governor of Texas. You wouldn't know somebody from the Senate because they work on terribly boring things that don't really affect you. They're just, clawing solutions back to their districts and that's it. But we made them into superstars. We invited them to any function of through good intentions. The Democrats doled government out into our life. The Republicans doled government into our life because instead of allowing the regular marketplace to solve their own problems, right, they had to involve themselves so they can take a cut of the money that was flowing. They got addicted to the cash that was flowing in when they're solving those problems. And all of these suggestions are just truths. I don't necessarily think that that they're changeable at this point. That's what we decided. We get the representative government that we like. We'll complain about the institutions and how they overreach, but we won't ever do anything about it. Like deportation without due process. So 330-595-1600. Let's see. What else happened over the weekend? So I went into the Tesla dealerships locally. There have been people who owned Teslas that have been experiencing small acts of vandalism locally, and the anger when you see a Tesla go by as a Nazi company headed by Nazis saluting on stage. And this ramp up, I don't necessarily think that we can continue this. This is leading to almost like a civil war of sorts. Because when we express ourselves in the way that we do, I mean, it would be college campus, somebody gets rowdy, January 6th, people get rowdy, they misbehave, and it's not tolerated. The people who misbehave shouldn't be part of a group and accepted. But we have the other side of that now, where not only is it tolerated, it's being amplified and encouraged. And even by people in positions of power. I mean, the first one I saw was when AOC was teaching illegals, lawbreakers, people who are guilty of not following the law, how to evade ICE and deportation. Like, that was the first one. Like, you are in a position of power and you are encouraging people to break the law. If you're in the legislature, you make laws. You should have some respect for the laws that you create. And if someone's breaking them, you shouldn't have them break them more. Why make laws then? Like, it blows my mind. But then you have, it used to be what I used to think about it. Like, if you made some kind of accusation or you threatened to do harm to a president, that used to be illegal and it used to be investigated. And anytime that you would say, I am going to do this thing, then law enforcement is supposed to take that seriously and investigate it as an incitement crime or an actual crime. I mean, I saw big banners yesterday with burn a Tesla. Like, literally, if you did the thing the banner said, that would be an actual crime. So maybe the person holding the banner didn't want to be the person to commit the crime, but it would be terribly convenient if someone who wasn't them picked up the language and went and burned a Tesla. They wouldn't exactly be sad that happened. So that inciting language, where we're inspiring people to do illegal things, if it were me, the police would have gone in and arrested the person that had inciting language on a sign. Now, if you say Elon Musk is a Nazi, right, that's just an expression of speech. You're not calling to some kind of act to happen. That's just between you and whatever, whatever way you want to express yourself publicly. I would argue with you, but you can go and say dumb things. It's not going to hurt me. Joe says the January 6th people got pardoned. Now he wants to give them compensation. I don't know the details of who got pardoned. I don't know if it was a mass pardoning. And I did see one article written that one of the people, after they were pardoned, went out and committed another crime. And so disagreement, like, if there were people that did not commit a federal offense where they didn't go as far, that the law should treat everybody exactly the way that it is written, and lawbreakers should be judged exactly how other lawbreakers are judged. It's the only way that we have a respect for the law is when we act on it the way that it was intended. So if there's a person that walked up to the Capitol and defaced it, they should be treated like Joe Schmo comes to the Capitol and spray paints on a wall. So I could take a vandal and see what they were charged with and what happened to them. And I can take a January 6th vandal and see what they were charged with, and it should be exact. Now, if there was a net of partisanship where someone was judged more harshly because they could be, that's where my my red flags go up and say you can't take the law and maneuver it depending on ideological standards. It has to be black and white, binary standards, and nameless, faceless. So you would be charged with something like, just as much as I don't think a judge that gets pulled over from DUI should be given a special privilege that they get excused from what they did, I should be able to take defendant A and defendant B, not knowing who their names were. They did this, and they were judged exactly the same way. But if Judge A did something and 4 days later Joe Schmo does it, and Judge gets almost nothing, and Joe Schmo gets the book thrown at him, well, that's not a just justice system. It's political. And I think a lot of what happened with January 6th is that people got lumped in those courts as part of an ideological punishment rather than a true blind judicial system. And and the fallout is, if it were me and I knew there was a whole group of people that probably didn't get a fair shake, I would go. We're not talking millions of people here. I would go through each one. I would look at what the prosecutor, what evidence, what they actually did, and there would be some that would be definitely not pardonable. And I believe that was a big misstep. Now, obviously, there hasn't been any, public consequences for that, and that's disappointing. That again, diving down into the principle, we need a blind justice system that doesn't give anybody preferences. And if they did, it's the game that's being played now, I disagree with wholly. It's like, we played lawfare, so I'm going to play lawfare. If you believe in no lawfare, when you have a chance to do the thing, you pass on it because you believe in the principle, not the political advantage that turning a blind eye to it gets you. And I see a lot of that in this administration, where they're absolutely effectively using all the same stuff that the Democrats did. Both of them are cast into the same thing. And I hope in the future that somebody that's rational says, this is getting stupid and silly. Let's let an objective person rescale it so that we don't have this kind of overreach. I don't want anybody to be able to abuse their power and use it to go after their enemies. But if you didn't have a problem with the Trump prosecutions, then you shouldn't have a problem with the January 6th pardons, because they are one and the same. A bastardization of what should be pretty obviously important people with power, looking at what's fair, truthful, and just. Let's see. They were tried and convicted. That's probably the truth. Since all January 6ers that were charged were given judge and jury, that's our system. Tell me what the Dems did to compare to that. Tell me what the Dems did to compare to that. The judicial system needs an overhaul, where it again is playing partisans games by specifically applying the law to the nth degree on certain people, and we had a whole era where people were breaking laws to come into this country, and justices and judges were turning a blind eye and not. Well, I'll use this example. So when the plane leaving the country were taking those gang members to Venezuela, there was a judge that threw out an injunction to stop the exiting of those people. Okay, so far so good. But there weren't any judges that were putting injunctions to stop the incoming portion of this. So which is more legal versus illegal? If you can take a judge and make them ignore certain parts of the law, but then heavy-handedly apply the law, well, then that's just a skewed application. And so it might not be, again, when we have so many laws and we've almost made everyday life be something that you could break some kind of rule or law. If somebody hones and focuses the government, they can find something to get you for. So the judicial system is basically just waiting for somebody to be ensnared in their trap. And it's not universally everybody. It is when you target somebody using the many laws beneath you that are at your disposal as tools to be able to go after. So my response to Joe would be that they are sometimes applying the law and in other times blind-eyeing the law. And that, like I said, is the misuse of a judicial system. Now, I take what happens there in voting the same way. So when a court sees a case, having them not be able to see who it applies to and letting just judge based on the evidence is the only way really to get the person out of it. So if you have you noticed that there is a lot of fraud and abuse? Now, if you as a citizen were defrauding the taxpayers of the government, do you think that they would just take the money away from your fraud? Or do you think you would be prosecuted and sent to jail? Versus if we take fraud in government, right, we just shore up the problem instead of marching someone off to jail. Why is there a double standard when it comes to certain people where if they commit fraud, but they're a government employee, that somehow they're getting a pass? Like that is, it creates different tiers of a justice system. And that's what we rail against, is when somebody gets either preferential treatment or they get targeted harder than the other person. It should be 100% uniform. You make a law, you break it, the exact same sentence is applied to you, no matter who you are or what level of the hierarchy you're in. 330-595-1600. It worked just fine until Trump came to power. I saw it start happening when Obama was the first that started using the system to an end, and it got worse. And Biden probably took it up to one of the highest volumes in my lifetime. But it's in the hopes of a libertarian that you go to the obscene, absurd level so that it breaks down. And I think that's what we're seeing here. So my hope is that they just took full advantage. So if we see this in Scammerville all the time, where somebody takes advantage of a scam, and as long as they try to get away with it a little bit, then it kind of passes and it doesn't become problematic. And if they just did that, they could get away with the scam forever. But they get greedy and they take it a little bit too far. And they pass over the red line that says, when I go to this level, the benefits are greater, but I become a bigger dot on the radar. And then if I go that route and I can't contain it, my thirst for the corruption is so high that I have to go there. Now I'm on the radar. Lots of people pay attention to me. And then it collapses under that weight. So that's what we're happening. If you don't believe lawfare is a real thing, then, another thing coming to you over the next 6 months, 8 months. Let's see. Julie says, kind of like Trump going after law firms that prosecuted him. Yeah, and I don't disagree that he is playing the same game, right? The same game that everybody else is. So we saw it with the, I think it was, who's that dude? Alex Jones, right? So he pushed on a conspiracy theory about Sandy Hook, and the stuff he was saying was untrue. And he got sued into oblivion, like billions of dollars, right? And so now we cast a die when we do something like that. A news organization says something untrue, they get sued. We cast a die. So you don't think that when the other side comes around, they're not going to do the same thing that you just did to that guy. They're going to follow the exact same precedent. But that has to be the thoughtfulness. if you're doing a thing, I think it was Harry Reid, and so I can never remember this word. Harry Reid gets up there. He says, "Hey, the Republicans are obstructing, so we're gonna just go up there and read out of War and Peace, right? And they're obstructing us, so let's get rid of the thing." I can't remember the word right now, but you guys will help me in the comments. So he got rid of it, and he didn't think for 1 second that if he did that, that one day he was going to be in the minority, and he's going to need that same strategy as a nuclear option to stop something that you don't have the majority to overcome. We're going to pull out that nuclear option. And they don't ever do this. Like, when it's used against me, how am I going to feel about it? And then you moderate your own behaviors, because it would be a bad weapon to be used against them. But again, both sides are doing it at this point. If we have lawfare, let's make it crazy and make people pull the plug on it, because when it gets absurd, that's when people will listen. Nobody played that game but Trump. Stop the lies, Joe. I just illustrated that the mechanisms of the government and bureaucracy can target individual people differently than other people. And everything from what they do to SpaceX, what they did to President Trump, what they did from the gangs that we're going over. This is a game that's being played by literally everyone. You can't say that it's not. I just gave you some examples. Billy says there isn't any lawfare going on with this administration where he targets individuals that were his opponents in the election. Here's what, early on, like the first couple days, there were lawsuits that were filed. I think it was Letitia James and some of the prosecutors that went in after Trump. So the way I look at it, when you go after someone, the public thinks it happens sort of as part of a machine. Somebody does an investigation, they put a file together, they put it on a stack, and then everybody who's guilty of that thing and everybody that they did the investigation on will go through that system. My question is, how did that one get specifically investigated and specifically on top of that pile? If you don't think the minute that you had the chance to investigate and prosecute someone, leaving everybody who was else was on that stack to go after them, I'm going to say that is equal to how Trump's investigation happened. He was specifically targeted, put specifically at the top of the stack for partisan political motivations, just like those other people had done to them. Let's see. And if he did, I wouldn't blame him in it at it all. Would be akin to George Washington saying, "Oh, I'm not going to shoot at these redcoats because I don't want anybody to think I'm just like them." That is foolish. And that is part of the, yet they are doing it too, which means the principled people out there saying, "No, I mean, I know why you're doing it, because they cast the die and you would be at disadvantage." And I hope that it doesn't. If you perpetuate it, then they're just going to do it again too, and then we've got this massive cycle of everybody using the mechanisms of government to just go after enemies and not just blindly apply the law to everybody who breaks the law equally. Paul says, small L libertarianism is the best, categorized as move away from the authoritarianism and towards the individual freedom, and not about left versus right. It's okay, and is often the case, that libertarians move down and to the right or down and to the left. The direction towards liberty is the most important factor. And you are basically preaching against more power, right? So the individuals grant the power to the government, and the government will do everything to take more of it. And how do they do that? They justify their take of power because they think they can handle it better than you, and they scare you into giving them more. So let me dress up a problem, make you feel like they're going to just take care of it, or scare you into giving up that. And once you give it to them, they are never relinquishing that power back to them. So it's up to people who are truly against authoritarian governments and fascism to say, We don't want that. And how do you do it? You limit the scope of government. You take the talons off of what they're capable of doing. And all of these things we're talking about today, utilizing, the judiciary to go after people and the investigative branches to go after people. That's how you take their talons away from them. If they can't do it, they won't do it. If they can do it, they will give you these are scam artists. These are people who will lay down the foundation of doing the wrong thing, but making it seem like they have to. They were the only ones that can do it. And they flex this muscle so often. My only doubt or my only criticism is how many individual people who say they believe in personal freedoms are so willing to give it up to the government, one, and then defend the government when they totally turn it into a cluster. They'll still go to bat and say, oh yeah, you know what? They screwed up Obama's, medical insurance program. They did a terrible job. They made things more expensive, lied through it to sell it. But you know what? They broke it, and let's give them another go with this, rather than saying, you guys suck at solving problems. And all you do is you use the things we need as leverage to gain more power and gain more financial prosperity. And we're not going to do that anymore. That is the principle. We're going to starve you out of what you can do to us and what you can do to me, and give it to people who I can fire in 2 seconds. Go ahead and fire Obamacare. Go ahead and fire any other government program. What are you going to do? Call your legislator and tell them to vote against something? That's not firing. These are like, shooting a dart gun at a dinosaur kind of thing. You feel like you're making your voice heard, but you got nothing. You gave them all this power, and they're a behemoth, and they can destroy you in 2 seconds. All right, let's see. Joe says Trump broke. What did they do to Trump that he didn't deserve? It's the targeting of Trump for you got to look at the timing of when they did it and what the true accomplishment. So he might have been, in any other time frame, he may have been guilty and charged, right? But he was selected as a strategy of a political, the Democrat Party, to take out somebody in that was running for an election. Joe said, like the border. Julie says, Trump was investigated for crimes he committed. He breaks real laws like they don't apply to him. So far they don't. And I'm curious, do you have faith that Trump got a fair shake and that they were objective and they weren't coming after him? And so I want to know, from your standpoint, I know they went after the guy you like, but I want you to be objective and say, do you think that they were unfair to President Trump, how they did it? Do you think that there are other people that they also could have gone after in the same way that they didn't, and they selectively prosecuted him? So I don't disagree. He's probably guilty. I don't have a lot of faith in what the courts to be objective about this kind of stuff. Let's see. Got a phone call here, so let me take this call. All right. Caller on the line. What's going on?
Yeah, I was just, as you were saying that they targeted President Trump for different things, there was also a time when they didn't target presidents for things that they did, like Obama, when he loaded up 2 airplanes full of $1.7 billion in foreign currency and gold bars and sent it over to Iran, which, Iran is a state sponsor of terror. So to be sending them that kind of money in cash, I see that as treason. And I see Joe Biden's family taking money from foreign governments as treason, and they did that all day long. They laundered money through Hunter Biden. So what they're going after Trump for is usually there's really nothing there. It's a nothing burger. But these other guys have done really big moves, and no one questioned or did a thing about it when they were in office, or even after they left office. No one said anything about Obama since he left. All of the things he did.
So now, if you saw them say, okay, we've come to Jesus moment, and now we're going to hold the same standard to all politicians, and they walked Trump into a courtroom, they walked Biden into a courtroom, anybody who they did an investigation, and they decided we're not protecting this class anymore, would you feel all right knowing that they applied the law the same way over everyone?
Well, yes, I would. Unfortunately, our courts in this country are corrupt, so you would have to have, I think, military courts do something like that, because we're talking about big crimes like treason, and there's no Supreme Court that's going to, I mean, we know that, right? They're pretty corrupt.
Yeah, and so like I'm in the same boat as you. Is like why this one? Like we've watched a lot of politicians go down for scandals, equal or worse than what we saw with President Trump. I don't know. I mean, were you familiar with the case of how much the charges and how likely they were that he broke the law, or how were they trumped up and used creatively?
Well, I feel like they were trumped up, and the biggest thing is he's dismantling the power systems of these illegal actions, right? So somebody was sending money to terrorist groups around the world using USAID money. We know that. They armed Boko Haram in Nigeria. They armed Hamas. They armed many other terrorist groups around the world with our taxpayer dollars, not our say-so. We didn't give them the green light to do this. But now that Trump is going into all these organizations like Treasury, USAID, now we're finding out real crimes. I feel like these are real crimes that we're finding out about.
Now, they keep saying that they're going to prosecute the people, but there have been zero indictments. There's been do you ever think that we'll get to a point where the people that committed these crimes will ever see any kind of justice?
The ones that they could track the money back to, okay, the ones that directed Treasury to send money to, say, Boko Haram, if we could connect that to someone, yes, I do. Some of this stuff went out with no one even knows where it went. I mean, Elon Musk said they found $4.7 trillion. He goes, nothing was coded. We literally don't know even where it went. So in some cases, you're never going to find out who was behind it. In other cases, I think you will. You know, was Obama president when they armed Boko Haram? I seem to remember that was many years ago. And they had all this, you know, they were kidnapping Christian girls from schools. I don't know if anybody remembers that. 300 girls one time they had all these weapons. I thought to myself, where are they getting all these weapons and all these SUVs and everything? So I think our government was arming them.
So
a lot of these terrorist groups.
The questions of the courts being corrupt, in which way do you think our judicial system is corrupt?
You mean just our civil courts? Well, I mean, just look at Child Protective Services and some of these different things. I mean, I've seen cases where, you know, people are clearly abusing their children and they still have given rights to see them. You know, big crimes like incest, really dark stuff. You see that all the time. So the Child Protective Services, I think, is one area where the family courts can be corrupted. And just everything, just like I said, going after Trump for nothing, when clearly we've had other presidents committing treason. And Obama did commit treason by sending all of that money to Iran. He really did. They said that they found foreign currency in Treasury Department. Really? And you're just going to put that on a plane and send it over there? Gold bars. It's going to be interesting. And then it's also going to be interesting to see if there's any gold in Fort Knox. And, you know, all the people who have stood in the way, I think Mitch McConnell was one, being from Kentucky, who always stood in the way of anyone auditing Fort Knox. All right. So I think Mitch McConnell, I don't care what party they're from. I mean, if they're a globalist, they're a globalist. And they don't have our country's interests at heart. So it doesn't really matter. And it looks like the globalists are controlling really both parties.
Yeah. Thank you for calling. I appreciate you being out there, 17.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. And Julie says, if all courts are corrupt, how do you expect any justice at all? My recommendation has always been that, if the courts are used to carve out and exempt certain people from the law, and sometimes apply the law fully, then you have to pare down the amount of, if you can't expose every single person to a law, then it's not a good law. You cannot have asterisks and be able to use the law sometimes and not, because then it can be weaponized. And so in this case, if you can take a judge and put their party at the end of their name on the ballot and get elected somebody who's going to bring partisanship to the bench, then they're going to side not on law, case law and law. They're going to be able to get creative to strategize towards an outcome, almost like the prosecutor and the defender. See, that is their job. Like, the prosecutor is there to get a conviction, and the defense is there to defend the client against that prosecution. So you have this push and pull between the two. Their job, whether or not they did it or not, is to give a fair shake through the system. The judge is an arbiter. He's not a strategist. He should be objective about which way it goes down. He should not be skewing. You can't pick the guy in the seat and really want that guy to be guilty. He should be free from any kind of partisanship. He should be just as okay with someone who the law could not be applied against as the other, because being an arbiter versus being an activist are two separate things. So when the justice system, when you could almost, what if you were able to finagle an outcome? What if you were able to take something like, we'll say like when Black Lives Matter happened and Derek Chauvin, and you have a guy that went through a court system and is in prison right now. And the primary reason he's in prison, because if he didn't go to prison, there would be uprising. Not that he was guilty by a standard that was universal. It was skewed to the point where he needed to go to prison as a sacrifice to the altar of everything that was happening at that time. And so when the judicial system can make that happen, like, he could have just as easily gotten a not guilty conviction, and there would have been consequences civilly, but we would have more, we'd have more respect to the law when it is applied instead of this arbitrary, depending on who you are and what you did and what the complications are and the consequences are. It's universal, that it's a objective standpoint, not political. And until we root that out, we're going to have a lot of arbitrary. I mean, if you're a judge, you can not go to jail because for DUI when Joe Schmo just did. And and to answer Julie's question, that the courts are corrupt, and our goal is not to get rid of justice, no anarchy here. It's to shore it up and make it so that it is more just, taking the segments that are causing it to be unjust and rooting them out. Same thing with elections. All right. If I say there was fraud in an election, that should not be an origin where you defend against it and say, well, elections are sacred. How dare you say there was fraud? I want the election that, when observed by an objective person, that they come away with, you did everything to make it super hard for fraud to be done. And if they go through and objectively observe and say, oh no, you're doing things that actually make more fraud happen, that's the opposite. We're trying to make elections more fraudulent. We're trying to make the justice system, more unjust. And we're doing the opposite of cleaning this up because it's political. Let's see what else. Let me get my glasses on and read comments. Let's see. Tyrants don't need to destroy the system. They just need to credit mistrust. Mistrust should be the origin, the curiosity, whether it's warranted or not. Conspiracy is in spite of evidence, right? That you still, like, if I said flat earth and you're like, I believe in flat earth because X, Y, Z. And then someone comes along and says, well, no, I got proper information for X, Y, Z, and here it is, right? The curiosity was, I want to see who wins this battle. If your data outmaneuvers and outperforms the competing data, then you win the argument. But if I will believe it in spite of evidence, that's when we go into territory. So everybody's supposed to mistrust. I'm supposed to be a cynic. I'm supposed to mistrust. I'm supposed to criticize. The media is supposed to criticize, mistrust. When we do that, we put pressure on these institutions to be better. Not that we if you want government to be a religion, then you never trust what government does. or you never mistrust what government does. We just worship at the altar of people who would always do good. And even when digging through everything that Doge had found and how much crap went on and how much they just divvied your tax money to anybody who would give Democrats a political advantage, you're still going to trust that today's dollar that you send them isn't, 70 to activist groups and 30% to whatever charitable organization you wrapped it in. I mean, you're freaking crazy. It needs to be totally neutered. Let's see. It's only political if they go against you. No, it's political on both sides. If you make a partisan decision, something that benefits one and not the other, if you make the same decision not depending on who's sitting in front of you, then it is apolitical. Joe, the free and fair. Thank you. I appreciate that. Denise says Supreme Court said Biden did not have authority to forgive student loans, but he did it anyway. Yes. And again, should be charged, prosecuted for breaking the law. And he wasn't. He broke the law. It just wasn't treated the same. And that's why I said, omitting application of the law is the corruption that we're talking about. And let's see, your last caller. And again, argue back at it. You guys are some of my favorite commenters, because I don't expect people to just listen to what I say. I think you should present a better argument than mine. And if I'm convinced, then we make everybody more whole because you had something to offer. But partisanship, talk radio has been famous since I was a young kid, 20-year-old kid driving around listening to the talk radio hosts talking about these issues. And what was beautiful about it is that I got to hear from someone that said one thing, and I was like, okay, that made sense. And then the other side got to perk up and share their perspective. And I'm thinking, they kind of got some good ideas about that too. So it's in most of the issues that we talk about, it is not a binary, somebody's right and somebody's wrong. I'm willing to concede that both parties are both wrong and right about most stuff. And if they had interest in coming to the middle and coming to some conclusion, they would get more done, and they would buy the public's trust back into it because they were willing to say when they were wrong. They were willing to right mistakes that they made. And we would be willing to trust people who tell the truth when it comes down to it. Every day, turn on your TV. There used to be in 2000, 2001, 2002, that we invented terms about misinformation, right? And the public agreed, we don't want to hear misinformation. But every day I hear that Trump and Elon Musk want to gut Medicare and Social Security. Every day. And you can talk to Trump and Elon Musk, and it isn't in their plan, nor they will say, no, we're going to protect and preserve the Social Security. So how can Democrat politicians get on stage and say the thing they know is not happening, but they repeat it over and over again? Would that not be the misinformation that we wholly rejected during the 2020, 21, and 22 as being something that's really bad for discourse among us, right? You might have a theory. You might have a theory that, if Elon Musk thinks that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and he's having actions where he's dismantling portions of the thing, that he's somehow going to then target and do something that he said he wouldn't do, and he's going to do it. That's a suspicion that has legs. But you know what you got to do? You got to complete the circuit, right? And you have to say the thing that's true. So if Tim Walz got on stage and said, I think Elon Musk is going to dismantle Social Security, get rid of Social Security, that would be a truth. That would mean I think. If he says Elon Musk is going to do it, right, then as an authority, if somehow I'll know something that I don't know, then somehow I think, oh, well, I guess he's going to do it, when it might not be true. You can have something like suckers and losers. You can have they're fine people too. You can have the peacefully protest. And all of that stuff was opposite of what was said about what Trump had said. And so the carrying of the misinformation that lasted only a couple years, and it was only directed in a single direction. Now it's the other side around, and all of a sudden we're cool with some misinformation because it gets people afraid. They'll vote a certain way. We'll take back power, and now it's corrupted in the same way that we kind of jostled that a little bit loose, where we got people caring about truthful things, and all of a sudden we're like, okay, we're cool with untruthful things all of a sudden. Let's see. Biden broke no law. Let's see. You won't call out the lies. No, give me a lie, and I will tell you that. And the disappointment is, I think they're all lying. Political expediency means that they're not going to say the truthful thing because they'll get gang tackled. So I think they're all liars. So I will call out most things that you see aren't a direct lie, right? They're creative. So like if you wanted January 6th takeover, you don't want to be responsible for being the person that let protesters just come in, because then someone's going to say, why did you do that? If you wanted them not to be in there, why'd you leave the doors unlocked? Why did you put up no barricades? Why did you not call in extra support? But if you can do something and either make it someone else's fault, right, or not be connected to you and be able to say, it's plausible that I didn't know anything about it, and then it dies, because these politicians insulate themselves from the criticisms that arise after they do a thing. And that's why the primary reason you don't see politicians and government workers being marched into prison, they on purpose make it so that if there's fallout, it's nobody's fault. So nobody goes to jail. If you made it so there was somebody within the bureaucracy that had final say on every single thing, so that if they made a corrupt decision, it would fall and be on them, then we'd have a little bit of a change. But instead it's like, we found fraud. Who's responsible? Oh, just a form that's supposed to have somebody's signature on it, and now we don't know who to blame because nobody signed the form. Okay, well, let's get people to sign the form so we know who is to be held accountable if this thing goes sideways. Let's see. Denise said they're going after fraud in those programs, but the media is spinning that truth because they know it too. And politicians know it too. If you really got down in person, just you and them, and you said, hey, come on, do you really know that they're just going after recipients that shouldn't be getting it rather than cutting Grandma Edie's benefits? And he's going to say, yeah, but you know what? That wouldn't fly with voters. They need to hear I'm a politician, and they're waiting on for me to say that Elon Musk is going to take away Social Security benefits from people. And from a technicality standpoint, if you cut benefits, there might be a couple of them snagged in there. There was a legitimate payment that went out, and all we got to do is go to birth of Social Security, and look, they cut. But in a intelligent debate about it, if you looked at what they are cutting, you will see a standard that says, let's just say there's criteria. The first thing that gets me to look at you is that you're 150 years old. The second one is the database where you live, where the checks were cashed, who lives in it. And I can go to your house. I could see that you're Edna. I can see that that's your bank account. And I could see that that's your home address. Cool. That doesn't apply to you. But let's just say Edna did die and somebody else has been cashing her checks. That's the one we're going after. Edna stopped receiving her checks because somebody fraudulently called in and had her checks be deposited to a different account. She didn't notice. That's the one we're going after. So all of the metrics and math will tell you whether or not this feels like we're trying to shorten the application, who should be getting Social Security is rule set number one, and who is receiving it. And if somebody who is not receiving it gets cut out, that doesn't, defy the spirit of what Social Security is. If you cut out all the fraud, you make it easier, then the recipient gets more benefits. In my mind, that is what the end goal is, that Social Security recipients are going to get more benefits. It's going to be easier, faster, because when you take the bureaucracy out of it, it costs less to distribute those funds and manage those funds and regulate those funds. There's more left in the pie to be able to distribute. And, again, you can take that theme and apply it in voting, judicial, Social Security, anything they're kind of Department of Education. And it's not the thing that the Democrats are saying. They're just spinning it up in a way that will get people mad and make people show up on, the front steps of their local governments and protest and be really mad about it. But what they're mad about is the incitement language of saying something that isn't true. And when that incitement creates violence and property destruction, the person that incited it, as the die has been cast, is the person that is the person who's responsible is the one who said it. All right, 330-595-1600. Let's see. Musk said it's a Ponzi scam, and I'm going to tear it out by its roots. He said it should be torn out by its roots. So the quote was, Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, and it should be torn out by its roots. That doesn't mean he's going to. That's his opinion, and I feel the same way. If we could tear Social Security out by its roots right now and replace it with something that is market-based, or maybe not even tear it out for current recipients, but just have the next generation not included in a program that's absolutely terrible, wean ourselves out of the benefits that are coming from Social Security, that would be rooting it out. That would be allowing it to sunset, to be replaced with something that can't be rated by people we don't trust in government. So big difference between I think it should be and that's what I'm going to do. It's not the same thing, Joe, at all. It's not the same thing. Your personal beliefs about something does not mean you're going to act in that same way, right? That's just your personal beliefs about it. All right. You can't be impartial. I absolutely can be impartial. Joe says he's cutting jobs to take down Social Security. Curiosity, you got to provide a little bit more details about taking down Social Security. Would be, you'd have to have some evidence to say that that's what his true intent is. Or tell the truth. Same thing. No. Elon and Trump will not directly cut Social Security. The GOP will do it legislatively, and Trump gets plausible deniability. Well, in the end, I agree with you that it's been in my entire lifetime that they've said that in 8 years, Social Security goes bust, right? And so when it comes to how you're going to do that on year number 9, there has to be some mathematical changes. I think Social Security could be changed and operated differently so that it would become solvent, right? But as long as we're having these discussions about how somebody's going to destroy it, and then somebody wants to make it into somebody wants to just ride it into its insolvency, there's this middle ground of let's just make Social Security work. And at the end of the day, if we clean it up and we modernize it, we can find ways. Like if tomorrow we said, right now, we're going to take all Social Security money and we're going to put it in a lockbox, and we're going to allow states to be able to invest that money into their economies, and we're going to protect it. So we're going to have to get by over the next 20 years. And until those people that are part of that system start taking advantage of the new system, the other people that their money has been looted and robbed, we're going to have to pay that back into the system by using the government programs is what stole from Social Security, not taxpayers, government programs. So those programs, we're going to make them so that they have a net output. We're going to use the net output to backfill the losses in the money that politicians robbed. And then you have to buy everyone in with the plan that mathematically this is how it works. So if you want to protect it and preserve it, then this is the best way of doing it. That'd be a nonpartisan version of it that just wants it to last. If you do what we're doing right now, what he was talking about is the legislature being able to kill off Social Security. What kills off Social Security right now is inaction. And because the Democrats think that the only way you shore up Social Security is that you raise taxes on rich people. And the right thinks that the only way to shore up Social Security is to cut benefits. But neither one of those things is sellable to anyone. So there's an impasse of something that is not going to happen. We cannot let it go away, right? Or we cannot cut it because it's already a bad deal. Social Security is already a really bad financial deal. So to cut benefits on something that you're already taking a bloodbath on, the red ink by letting your government hang on to your money, it would be worse if those benefits got cut. So again, 330-595-1600. They will never take away our Social Security heads will roll. You're absolutely right. Joe, keep your hands off our money. Your money's in the form of paper right now. So there is nothing to keep your hands off of. It is basically a stack of government programs that owe you their money. And maybe if we cut the budgets of those programs, that we can, I don't know, claw back some of that borrowed money from the Social Security lockbox. But until then, there is no money. They stole it all. Let's see. The only one, you think only one? Do you think the only one stole it was Reagan? Or do you think every politician that spent us into a debt oblivion is responsible for raiding the bank account of the United States? Defund it and give it money to rich people. I didn't say rich people. I say skilled people. If you want to, if you take an investment advisor and you give them a block of money and you charge them with doing great stewardship for that money, make it worth more right now than it was before. And I let's just say take $1 million and I want this to last this long. I want to be able to take some of the interest off of this or the dividends that I get off of this and live off of that, do what you will. So you have to take really smart people and figure out how to get a return rate on your money that is, you're losing money by investing in Social Security. And you're losing it because you will never be able to collect enough of it over your lifetime to justify having it taken from you for 40 years. They're not giving you that much money on the other side. And it goes away. When you die, it goes away, right? So if you privately owned that, and that was truly your money, that when you die, it's sitting in a bank account that then goes to your family and follows your bloodline. But right now, it just evaporates. And, we put the math together when people weren't living quite as long. And now we've bankrupted it by stealing all the money and backfilling it with taxes. But there's still a positive ratio with the number of people paying into it as people receiving benefits from it. And again, insolvent. So we got to do something. I want them to come put every creative method on the table, but this isn't new science. Financial sciences are not new. All you have to do is take what you're getting and just improve it, just like you improve the election system. So voting, either you make something that makes it better or you make something worse. And all we're doing is looking to improve it in a way that is better than what we have right now. And it's so bad, it should not be hard to improve it. But if it's partisan, it'll never be improved. Everybody will be afraid to touch it because of the implications from it. Let's say people love Social Security. Yeah, they do, because it's just enough feed. Like I took $200,000 away from you for your entire life, and I'm going to send you $1,000 a month. And then we're happy about it because we get a check in the mail like it's a paycheck, and it feels like, that's a good payback. But on paper, on a ledger, it is a terrible return when you compare it to what literally any financial advisor, even a bad financial advisor, would be able to give you a better return on your money than Social Security does. Nobody wants that. You Republicans want to privatize everything. It's just another word for stealing. How's it stealing? I think what the private side offers is that they will do it better because you have financial incentives. You get paid when you do things well, make a great product. And if you make a great product, then you give them more. If they don't do great, you fire them. Public is that you basically are going to do as little, put the mediocre product together, and oh, by the way, you can't fire me. So there's absolutely no incentive to do right. If there was actual financial people that were in charge of saying, hey, these people are lending their money to us their entire lifetime, let's just give them a really good return on it. So we'll just have public investors who, they're not going to steal your money. They're not going to spend it on any programs. So literally what you said that the private side would do, the public side did do. They freaking stole your money, and they're holding hostage people that didn't steal their money to pay back the money that they stole. That's like projection 101. All right, let's see. Better than eating cat food, keep your hands off of it. Somebody's going to have their hands on it, and they have to, because again, it's not something that will last long enough to pay beneficiaries. So, Joe, I really appreciate you taking the time to banter, go back and forth with me. these are always good, and you're in good spirit with it, and I appreciate you being out there. We're going to come back tomorrow, and the MLO Bros are going to be here at 9:00. I want to thank everybody for listening and tuning in today, and have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this show on Youngstown Studio. This is original Youngstown content. Feel free to share our videos and tell your friends about us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. Thank you for your support.